Good afternoon or good morning to everyone on the line, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to today's webinar presentation. My name is Maria Nuesti, and I will be your moderator. We're very excited to have all of you with us today for our first look at our new simulation, Sexual Misconduct Prevention for Students. I see quite a few of Kognito current clients on the line, as well as some new friendly faces as well, virtual faces. So thank you for joining us. Today, I am joined by two of my colleagues who have led the charge in the creation of this new simulation that will be available at the beginning of March. However, before I hand it over to them, I want to go over some general housekeeping. The first is that today's session is being recorded, so don't worry about taking any notes. We'll send you a copy of the recording and the slides after the presentation. As well, I want to also share that during the presentation, you are in listen-only mode, so we will not be able to hear you. However, on the right-hand side of your screen, you have a question interface where you can submit questions throughout the presentation. We've allotted time at the end to go through as many questions as possible. I also want to mention that for those of you that are on social media, please feel free to connect with us. You can reach us at Kognito or use the hashtag Kognito webinars. We'll be monitoring that throughout the presentation. Finally, I do want to mention that for all of you participating on the line, you will be receiving a link to the simulation for you to experience it at your own pace at the very beginning of March when the simulation is released. So you are all the first to try it out at your own pace. During this presentation, you will get a demonstration of how it works, as well as the content. So with that, I do want to launch a couple of poll questions as well to put us in the right frame of mind for today's discussion. The first poll question is, if you could tell us a little bit about, does your institution currently provide sexual misconduct training for your students? Just the poll will launch on your screen. If you can just tell us yes, no, or not sure. We're going to give you a few seconds to answer, to come back, close out Facebook and come back to your screen and let us know. Does your institution currently provide sexual misconduct prevention training to students? All right, I see a couple of you answering. We're going to give you about 5 more seconds before we share the results with the audience. And the results are in. The majority, so 71% of you said yes. So most of you have some sort of training in place already. 14% of you said no, and 14% said not sure. So there are a lot of you that have something in place currently. Now, we're going to launch our second poll question in just one moment, which is, how prepared would you say are your students to navigate difficult situations related to sexual misconduct? And that poll is going to launch on your screen again in about a second. We'll give you 30 seconds to answer. And again, just give you your gut reaction or just a quick gut check. How prepared are your students to navigate difficult situations related to sexual misconduct? Are they very prepared? No additional training is needed. Somewhat prepared, they could benefit from additional training, or not prepared at all. They have not received any training to date. And finally, not sure. So we'll give you a couple more seconds, and then we'll share the results. Here we go. So here we go. 76% said they are somewhat prepared. They could benefit from additional training. 10% said not prepared at all. And 14% were not sure. But what's really important is that 0% of those of you on the line said that do not feel like they're perfect, that they do not need anything. So it's a good conversation to be had today. So thank you for participating. With that, I'd like to introduce both of our presenters today. We have Kim Weiland, who is a product manager here at Kognito. And we're also joined by Brian Fluman, who is the product owner for Kognito as well. And they both lead our education strategies, so all of the simulations that we push out to K-12 and higher education. These are the folks making all of that happen. So with that, I'd like to hand it over first to Kim to get us started. Kim, take it away.
Thanks, Maria. I am coming in from Philadelphia, so I am going to be saying next slide throughout. So, Scott, if you want to go to the next slide. So I always want to start conversations around our products by going back to what our mission is as a company. Everything that we create is really grounded in this idea that we want to combine the science of learning and the art of conversation to really give people the opportunity to practice the skills that can improve social, emotional, and physical health. And we're going to talk a lot about that today as it relates to this product and how we have really spent time making sure that people have the ability to practice the skills and really the conversations that matter. We have a lot of different products with different skill sets, whether it's bystander skills, helping a friend, or even the conversations that we have with ourselves and self-reflection. How do we enable people to practice those skills and improve those skills so they're confident to have those conversations? So if you want to go to the next slide. Some of you are familiar with us already. We've actually been working in the higher ed arena for a while, since 2011, and we have quite a few simulations already. We were focusing heavily around student mental health and supporting diversity on campus. The goal of these simulations is really to create a safe and supportive school climate that can really create a strong foundation for student success. And as we've been working with clients since that time, we've begun to have conversations, and a lot of our clients have come to us and said, hey, there are a lot of other topics that we would love to have you guys bring this idea of practice with virtual humans and this ability for us to meet students where they are and with the skill sets they're bringing to campus. Are you guys open to exploring some of those other topics? So if you want to go to the next slide. So we went back and we decided, hey, let's talk about some of these topics. And the one that we decided to begin with is sexual misconduct. And we said, what if every student was able to navigate these difficult situations around sexual misconduct in a safe and private practice environment where we're really able to meet students where they are? As you guys know, students come to school with different backgrounds, different experiences, different languages of how they talk about sexual misconduct. And so by being able to really meet them where they are and provide feedback and practice on those skills, we thought this is something that will be new in the market, that's being asked for in the market, and we can create a real positive change around this. So if you want to go to the next slide. So we began to spend quite a bit of time with our learning design experts who are really embedded in the best ways to have students and others engage with this topic to really begin to practice those skills. And we spent a lot of time with our prevention experts, both internally and externally, as well as working very specifically with legal and compliance as well, so that we were touching on all things related to this topic. One of the pieces that we wanted to make sure that we were doing, and you'll see the learning objectives here, just want to call out a couple of things before I turn it over to Brian Fluman, who will spend time going more in depth on each of these learning objectives. And that is, we really do know that putting students in the position to be able to practice the skills gives them the ability to emotionally engage and use reflective thinking. And so by working with those prevention experts and our learning design people, we have really created something special here where when they are put in a position to choose what to say next, what to do next, and really use those critical thinking skills, they're much more deeply engaging with the subject matter and really building a much stronger understanding of the topic. And the feedback that they're provided along the way ensures that we're meeting them based on where they are on their attitudes and their behaviors that they're bringing to the table, but also pushing them towards really reinforcing the positive behaviors and reducing the negative behaviors. One of the pieces that we've also made sure is that on and off campus resources are a really important piece of this, and making sure that in the practicing and helping a friend, that we're making sure that students are comfortable in bringing up those resources and referring a friend to those resources. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian. He's going to go into a lot more detail on each of the sections, and then we'll do a brief demo as well.
All right, thanks, Kim. Hi, everybody. As Kim mentioned, I'm going to kind of go through each of the different aspects of the product itself, and then you'll be able to hear from Kim again after I'm done. So the slide you're looking at right now kind of gives a quick overview of the full extent of the product. So we split it into 5 different modules, as we call them, starting with an overview, moving on to bystander intervention, kind of a pre-misconduct scenario, moving ahead into a consent discussion, kind of in the moment, followed by helping a friend, where it's kind of after an assault has happened and how you handle that, and then finally with our last module that we call staying safe. I'm going to go into some of the details of each of these modules in a minute, but I want to just kind of give a little bit of an overview of some of the elements of our product that go throughout the entire process. So the first step of all the modules is a didactic, which is pretty much a short 5 to 7 minute kind of introductory instruction led by an instructional coach that follows you throughout the entire simulation. There are a few interactive elements to kind of keep it moving, but they basically introduce each of the topics and teach various skills that you'll use in the rest of the module. Similarly, each module ends with a check for understanding, which is essentially a small quiz, 2 to 5 questions, making sure that the students, the learners, really understood the material. And I'll show an example of that when we get to the demo. The 3 modules in the middle are kind of the meat of the product, the true conversation. So what we call scenario is an actual interactive conversation that happens. Each of those is followed by, there's an instructional coach that provides feedback while you're going through the conversation, and then we kind of summarize that feedback in what we refer to as a dashboard at the end. And then another element that we have for all of the conversations is, because we let it be up to the user to choose what to say during these conversations. They're not always going to pick the correct thing. We guide them along the way and let them know how they're doing, but we give them an opportunity to also play the ideal scenario through to see what would happen if they've made the best choices throughout the entire scenario. So now I'll talk a little bit about each of the specific modules in a slightly more detail. So in the introduction, you're introduced to your 2 instructional coaches, in this case, Alex and Malcolm. So in addition to having these characters that follow you throughout the entire process, they also have their own backstory and kind of talk about their own history to help make it relatable to the students that are using the product. And we've actually shown this product to a bunch of different college students who have really reacted positively to having these characters with them throughout. So the main focus of this introduction is introducing a bunch of different definitions around sexual misconduct, and then the quiz is kind of making sure that you understand the differences among sexual misconduct, sexual assault, etc. So the next section is this bystander intervention, and in a moment, this is the part of the sim that I'll be able to demonstrate in action a little bit, but just kind of a preview. You are at a party in college and kind of observing some questionable behavior where you think there might be some sexual misconduct that's about to happen. So the coaches had previously explained the kind of 3 Ds of bystander intervention, and the conversation gives you the opportunity to try each of those out, to delegate to, in this case, delegate to someone else at the party, the host of the party, and then come up with ways to distract the other characters, the potential victim and the potential assaulter, and being direct with them. So you get to interact with both the male and female character in this part of the simulation. The middle module, checking for consent. So here, the coaches explain exactly what consent is, how it has to be informed, as well as enthusiastic and continuous. There's some various different scenarios that are brought up with a wide diversity of characters in terms of scenarios that could happen. The conversation is between these two characters you're looking at on the screen right now. So it kind of plays out where the girl, Kate, initially is giving consent, and then at a certain point during this scenario, she decides to stop giving her consent, and then you have to kind of decide and work your way through how that will play out. Because this is a very touchy subject, we also have, in addition to the kind of printed the printed feedback in the dashboard that we provide, in this case, we also have what we call dynamic feedback, where Kate actually addresses you, the student, directly, kind of saying how she felt during the situation, regardless of what happens. We don't, just to be clear, in case anyone is concerned, we don't actually allow an assault to happen in the product itself, but we try to show all the different cases that could occur in terms of the right thing to do, as well as some pitfall steps that someone might say that are not truly appropriate. And then the final conversation we have, we call helping a friend. For those of you familiar with other Kognito products, this is pretty similar to the conversations that we have in those products, where they're kind of two parts. So one part is really just getting, in this case, Becky, who's had a bad experience with a past boyfriend, kind of getting her to open up, be nicer, but in no way are you responsible for being a counselor yourself to her. So the second part is really about helping refer her to the right resources, and the coaches, prior to the conversation, explain all the different types of resources that are available on college campuses, both confidential sources as well as non-confidential sources. And then finally, as I mentioned, we end up with the final didactic, staying safe, where the two instructional coaches kind of give additional tips and tools about how you can stay safe, as well as showing different ways that you can recognize warning signs of potential abusive behavior. So now we'll take you into a sneak preview of the sim itself. So this is, as I mentioned, the first conversation, the bystander scenario. So as I said, you're at your friend, her name is Abby, her party, and you see some activity going on between Logan and Sarah.
Here, I got you another drink.
No thanks. I feel like I've had enough.
What? There's no such thing as enough.
I don't know.
You're gonna make me drink alone? Don't you want tonight to be fun for us?
Well, fine.
There we go.
So the way all of our conversations work is they start with, you have prompted with a menu up in the corner here, with a bunch of different options of what things you can say. So in this case, it actually starts with a few different actions. So you can decide, I want to intervene, I want to walk directly over to Logan and Sarah, I can ask for help. Ask Abby, the host of the party, for her opinion, or I can decide to explore the rest of the party. So since I know that first thing that I want to do, the first D that I want to do is that delegate, I'm going to decide to ask for help.
Hey, Abby,
Hey, Jason, what's up?
can I talk to you for a minute?
Sure. What's going on?
So throughout the conversation, the instructional coaches, by way of text, kind of make some comments for you. So in this case, it was the fact that you made a correct decision, letting you know that by delegating to someone with authority, you have a better chance of being able to handle this situation. If you have made a bad decision, additional feedback from the coaches will appear on screen, letting you know what you did wrong and kind of advising you. If anyone, I just want to, if there's a track of the party sounds in the background, so if any of you are having trouble hearing, that's why we turn on the captions when they're talking, but I just want to know that you should expect that, that's just the background noise of the party sound. So in addition to the kind of mandatory, so to speak, coach feedback that you get when you're making the decisions, oftentimes you'll have a feedback option that will show up on the bottom that you can choose if you want to open or not. In this case, I think it's actually the same message that you just got. So we'll walk through this a little bit more to give you a little more feel for the activity. So now I've got Abby with me. I can decide if I want to get information. This is what I want to ask Abby, if she noticed anything weird going on, or I want to just explain my concern. Either saying, should Sarah be flirting with Logan? I feel like Logan's coming on a little too strong. I'm going to choose the first one.
Do you notice anything weird going on with them?
I mean, I saw them flirting a little earlier.
And now?
I don't know. I think I get what you're saying.
All right, I think I'll take one more step before we move out of this conversation. So sometimes, the conversations are very dynamic. So some of the options that were given before repeat, and you can see them. You have another opportunity to ask those questions, or new options show up. Like here I have now, I make a plan. What do you think we should do? We need to tell them to back off. So I'll choose we need to tell them to back off.
We need to tell them to back off.
Well, I wouldn't use those words exactly.
Right, so in this case, I chose not necessarily the ideal thing to say, so my instructional coach text comes up, tells me what I did wrong. So
regardless, it won't hurt to go over there. Let's not make assumptions.
So that's kind of just a sneak peek. The way the scenario goes, eventually you do walk over and distract and talk to each of the characters separately. But for the sake of time, I want to show something else. So I'm going to first go to our menu. So when students first arrive in the product, this is where they will end up. They'll see everything except pieces that you've already done will actually be locked. But for the sake of this demo, I'm able to get into any section. You can kind of see all the different modules that we discussed before, each with their didactic and conversation. So what I'm going to do is just to show you an example of some of the feedback that you get. I'm going to look at the feedback for the helping a friend conversation. So in this case, it was pre-set up where the student who completed the helping a friend did not always do the correct thing. So when I arrive here at the dashboard, you can see that some of the language says that, for example, the very first line, Becky felt that you blamed her. So obviously you don't want to do that when you're helping a friend deal with such a situation like this. So it kind of it calls back to what the decisions you made and make some advice about how you might handle that differently if you were to go back in the conversation again. And then, so that's just one example. And similarly, I'm not going to read through the whole feedback here, but for each of the goals that you have as you start the conversation, there's specific feedback about how you met them, some examples of things that you chose, and why that was a good choice or why it was a bad choice. And then all the way at the bottom, as I mentioned when I was going over the format, you have the ability to view that full ideal path. So, it might take you 10 minutes or so to walk through the dynamic conversation, and then you can choose to play the ideal path, which will take a few minutes. So finally, I want to show you an example of one of the Check for Understanding quizzes that we have. So as I mentioned, there are a couple of these at the end of each of the different modules. They're all the same format. They're all multiple choice. The way that it works is we kind of allow you to select whatever you want, but we don't let you go all the way through until you've actually gotten the right answer. So this particular question about the different resources available, specific scenarios described. So I'm going to say that I think that this person should go to the counseling services office. Oh no, I was wrong. So we get feedback here for explaining why that was the wrong answer. For each wrong answer, this one is also wrong. It'll explain, and then when you kind of eventually get the right answer, it will tell you and it will allow you to move to the next page onto the next question. So in this case, there were 3 questions, and some of the other modules are 2 to 5. But that's essentially how it works, and we make sure that you get all the correct answers before you're able to move on, to just so we can be truly sure that you fully understood all of the instruction that you had. So that is it for the demo, and I'm going to hand it back over to Kim.
Thanks, Brian. One of the things that we make sure we do throughout the process is get student feedback. One of the things that we want to make sure is that it relates to students. They feel that it is engaging for them, and we want to and so we have done a lot of user testing, very positive feedback from students. For those of you who have some of our other simulations, you know that we also make sure that we ask those questions in the follow-up surveys to make sure that we are creating products that really engage with the students, that they relate to, and we always get very good responses on those. Anything working with college students where you're getting something in the 90% ratings, that's very, very high for that audience. One of the other pieces that we focus on is making sure that we are showing the evidence base for what we are doing, and the practice piece is key. We're putting people in situations to take that knowledge that they just learned and very quickly practice it so that they're embedding it. And our research shows that has the ability to really improve behavior change. And so we ask different levels of behavior change. So we have level 2 behavior change, which is your attitudinal questions that are really predictors of behavior change. So you'll see that in our other simulations, we're asking questions around their self-efficacy, and there's significant increases in those types of self-efficacy questions. And then we also ask level 3 questions as well, level 4, to make sure that we're seeing an increase in actual referrals and other things. So we have developed surveys along with our subject matter experts for this simulation that again looks at each of those areas of behavior change, and we'll be making sure that universities can look at what is their product and making sure that they can prove out the effectiveness of this product. If you want to go to the next slide. So this is just a summary of what we have talked about. Again, we want to make sure that people are able to practice what they have learned in the didactics, very quickly begin to use those skill sets to embed that. We have practice around bystander intervention, consent, and helping a friend. It engages the students and really drives that learning. We have made sure that the program is entirely compliant. We have worked with legal experts, Title IX experts, so all of the content that is required by law is currently in there, and we also have the ability to customize the resources section to be those of your own campus policies and resources. As I talked about, it's important to be able to measure the impact of this. So there are pre, post, and follow-up surveys embedded within the product to evaluate the effectiveness of the program. And we have worked with a really strong core group of experts across prevention, legal experts, instructional designers, and very importantly, real students, making sure that we're building in a way that they can relate to and is really going to help drive their engagement and their behavior change. Next slide. So just quickly, and then we'll open it up for questions. We do provide a full service. For those of you who are already clients of ours, you know that there are important technical features that come as part of this. I've talked about a few of them. There are also optional features such as SSO and others. If you want to go to the next one. And really importantly, our client success team really works with each of the schools to make sure that they are meeting their goals and being able to drive usage. We have an amazing team of dedicated account managers that work with universities on their strategic planning and rollout activities. And we can also offer additional implementation support depending on what your goals are and what you would really like to see us step in and help with. So I will leave it at that. I think the one thing I didn't mention that I expect might come up is, the pricing model. We do have a tiered pricing model based on the student size of your university or college. The information there, that's info@kognito.com. If you guys are interested in finding out more about the product or the pricing or any other questions we can answer, if you send an email there, we can answer those, but I will open it up to any other questions that have come in.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Brian, for sharing and providing all of us with an insight into what the simulation will look like and how schools can embed it as part of their prevention programs that they may have on campus. As we move to the Q&A portion, I want to encourage everyone on the line. We have a lot of questions that have come in, and Kim, you're correct. There were many questions around pricing. I do want to encourage everyone on the line to submit your questions online during this time so that our presenters can ask. I will start with the first question, and Kim, I will direct this one to you. How do you address in the simulation users that may be triggered by the content? There is a lot of powerful content being shown and that students will be able to practice. Can you tell us how that is covered in the simulation?
Absolutely, that's a great question. It's something that we made sure that there are warnings in the content to let students know that these topics will be covered. There is also resources in the resources section that points them if they want to talk to somebody or they have concerns or they are triggered. They immediately have a place to look for resources. There are national resources in there now, and schools are able to also embed their own school-specific resources in there as well.
Great, thank you very much. And can you tell me about, is this simulation 508 compliant and fully accessible?
We are 508 compliant. Brian, as the product owner, might have an even better answer to that, because I know that is something that we are always making sure that we are working on as those change. So,
Brian, would you like to add?
Yeah, we're always working with our product to make sure that we're following the latest compliance rules, and it's definitely something that we consider and treat as important.
And again, Kim, there's a lot of questions about the resources that are available to the students within the simulation. What does it look like for a school? What is the process for them to tailor their resources? How are they able to update them within the simulation? Can you just kind of elaborate more on that?
Sure, we have a specific resources section that can be accessed anytime it lives on that main menu, and there are different callouts throughout the simulation that does reference the resources section. They are moved through to that, so they actually cannot go all the way to the end of the simulation without having access to that section as well. Updating it is something that we currently have a process where you work with your client services person, your client success person, and what they will do is continually work with you to make sure that is up to date. Some universities like to push out to a website page that they keep up to date. Others want to embed it in a document that lives just within the simulation and keep that up to date. So there are different processes depending on how the university sort of updates their resources on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. And with the next question is, with the launch of the simulation being made available in March, how quickly or how soon can a school begin to implement this into their campus? What is that from a implementation timeline? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's really dependent on the school. Our ability to get it set up and turned around is quite quick. Usually that takes about 2 weeks. But if a school is looking to, they need to build out, say, their communication, how they plan to communicate this out to students, or if they don't have their resources quite figured out yet, we'd want to make sure that those are defined first so that it's very clear where the students are being pushed to, or if they wanted to implement an SSO or something of that, that would potentially extend the time to launch. But so that will be very school specific. But if you just want to get this up there and out and send it out to students, we can do that very quickly on our end.
Would you say that, and pardon to all of us on the call, we're based out of New York City, so there's a lot of sirens in the background, so I apologize for that. There's a follow-up in terms of like, will schools be able to roll this out for the back to school season starting next fall?
Absolutely. If schools want to start working with us now to get all of that set up, absolutely. Schools could roll this out starting in March. So we're ready to go, and our client success team is ready to jump in and begin to work with schools to plan their implementations of this.
I have quite a few questions around, the legislations and mandates. Can you tell me about the process of staying current with state and federal regulations as it pertains to this simulation? I know that you mentioned legal experts that have worked on the development of this STEM. Will they continue to work on this to make sure that we're up to date with legislations throughout for an ongoing basis?
They will, and there are clearly federal ones. There are also state ones. So we have made sure that our legal team is well embedded in what those state ones are as well. So California, New York, others have very specific ones. So that will be an ongoing process, and they will continue to review and keep us up to date on that. They're fully embedded with us as a company and this product.
Awesome. Those are the majority of the questions. Again, want to be conscious of everyone's time on the line. If you have additional questions that weren't answered during today's presentation, I want to share on the screen is both Kim's and Brian's contact information. If you're looking for information specific to your school, please definitely email info@kognito.com. That way we can tailor pricing information or any information around implementation and rolling this out for the fall. We can answer those questions through there, and we'll promise we will be quick with getting it back to you. So again, I want to thank both Kim and Brian for their time today, as well as everyone on the call. Thank you for joining us. Be on the lookout. In the next 24 hours, we will send you the recording and the slides from today. As soon as the simulation is released, the very beginning of March, to all of those that join, we will send you a link so that you can try this out for yourself and experience it and share your feedback with us. And stay tuned for more information. I look forward to the next webinar where you join us again. Thank you all.